This video was brought to you by the memories of Eugeo and Alice Tuberg as they head towards the peaceful light. The final episode explained for Sword Art Online Alicization's first half the human realm arc, rising up and standing tall one last time to resist as the hero, yet fail nevertheless. The fragment of a memory fades away along with the flaxen-haired boy, Ocean Turtle under attack and Kirito falling down into the void. Welcome everyone, it's me Gamerturk and this is your most accurate source of Sword Art Online information, Alicization Explained, featuring episode 24, My Hero. As always, timestamps to individual plot points are in the description as well as the pinned comment for easy navigation, but let's start this episode 24 explained with a disclaimer. First off, apologies for this video being 2 weeks late. I am writing my bachelor thesis this semester as well as taking my specialization course, both of which required a very heavy workload in late March and early April, hence why this video is only coming out now. Secondly, we had major changes in the adaptation, all of which I personally found very troublesome from a narrative standpoint in regards to what this episode should have conveyed, so don't expect an emotional narrative based explained video like the past 4 or 5 videos. This episode explained will be similar to episode 13 explained, where I will be focusing on these major changes so you can actually see how the events of the final climax actually came to be. What I'm trying to say is be ready to hear some blunt criticism after a couple of weeks of genuine praise towards the anime from a huge fan of SAO in every aspect and as a member of the SAO Wikia, just to illustrate how deeply I care for this series. On my channel I aim to be objective and point out the goods as well as the bads, and you should know that being a blind fanboy is just as harmful as being a blind hater. If you fall into the former category, I strongly recommend you click away, because this video will be full of criticism, not fanboy hype and praise like Foxen always does, because telling what people want to hear gets you views. No, I don't operate like that. But then again, if you want to read the books for yourself for the amazing experience that is much better than what this episode has offered, Amazon and Book Depository affiliate links are in the description and the knowledge of Stacia awaits you there. Since it's been 2 weeks already, a brand new giveaway is also live, featuring the next step of the adventure, Volume 15, Alicization Invading. The first step into the War of Underworld that the second half of the anime will be covering is your coveted prize, so check the giveaway link in the description for a chance to win. But without further ado, episode 24 covered the remaining 40 pages of volume 14, Alicization Uniting, and finished the Human Realm arc. If you watch my episode 23 explained video, I was genuinely expecting, with the amount left to adapt, a more or less perfect adaptation of this final standoff and the cliffhanger. However, what I got was... I don't even know how to describe it. It feels like the anime staff just didn't put any faith in their fanbase and had to turn every single cliffhanger into a visual explanation, as well as disregarding the emotions and feelings that made these final moments incredibly compelling in the books. Now, if you're an anime-only audience, you probably have no objections to this final episode. Honestly, if I hadn't read the novels, I would also be thinking about how cool the battle was, how emotional the farewell moment was, how out of patience Kirito was at the end, and what a cliffhanger that was at the very end. I certainly agree, yes. But as a light novel reader, I have to genuinely thank Reki Kawahara for this amazing ending he has provided us in the books, rather than the incredibly shallow adaptation of the anime. Again, for this video I will not be going into deep details and will solely focus on the major changes the anime has made this week. Let's go one by one, starting with our opener, the final duel between Kirito and Quinella. The episode had actually begun perfectly faithful, Kirito assuming Quinella's attack to be a high Norkian one-hit attack, but is getting caught off guard by it being the 4-hit combo vertical square, a skill Kirito knew very well, hence why he could somewhat deflect the second hit in the final moment. At first, Kirito's conclusion was that Quinella had learned the skill when she synthesized Eugeo, thanks to Eugeo's memories having knowledge of the sword skills. Kirito was thus certain he could still use skills he had never shown Eugeo to catch Quinella off guard. But there was one thing that Kirito had realized but didn't give much thought at that point. The term for the skills in Underworld was secret technique. However, Quinella directly referred to vertical square as a sword skill, not the cultural terminology known within the Underworld, but rather the technical system level term used back in real life. But Kirito had no time to waste, and immediately without thinking, he reached for his trump card as a one-handed sword user, the 10-hit ultimate skill Nova Ascension. Contrary to what he earlier believed in, Quinella had recognized the skill, however, and her response was swift. 6-hit rapier skill, Crucifixion. That possibly couldn't have come from Eugeo's memories, and Kirito was out of guesses at this point. He had used Crucifixion only a handful of times back in Aincrad, as he was a one-handed sword main. Had Quinella somehow peered into his memories, but Kirito had no more time to lose. He initiated another Warple Strike only to be met with a curved blade, a katana skill, Zeku, a skill that he had never heard of before. And that was the breaking point for Kirito. It wasn't memories of Underworldians, it wasn't his memories that Quinella learned these skills from, she had learned these straight from the system itself. Back in Aincrad, Kirito knew he wouldn't be able to beat Heathcliff because he had designed and knew all the skills and their counters extensively. And here, Quinella was standing as he plummeted into the pool of blood originating from Eugeo's wound, devastated by the fact that Quinella possibly knew every single skill existing in the system. She knew how to counter them all. And this is also the moment where I'm gonna go ahead and correct a mistake I did in one of the earlier Alicization Q&A sessions. Kirito at this point was completely lost on where these skills came from. Sword skills were not a part of the Seed Nexus at all, and the only other game that used sword skills the same way was Alfheim Online. But it would be impossible for Quinella to access wrecked servers to steal these kinds of skills. The thing is, this information may give you more clues as to who Quinella's contact in real world is, but the knowledge that the only possibility for the source of the skills was Alo also was a major hint for Kirito on how to defeat Quinella. I won't talk a lot about Eugeo, Kirito and Alice Zuberg scenes. This first one and the one after the battle, they are again very nicely adapted. The one thing I want to address here is the beginning of the first conversation and how sudden it feels that both Kirito and Eugeo remember their past, because the anime never cared to convey the idea that they were getting flashbacks of their past quite often at this point. If you look back in my 4 or 5 explained videos, both Kirito and Eugeo do provide a ton of hints that they are remembering certain things, like Kirito explaining Alice her past in detail and being surprised, since it was unlikely Eugeo explained all of these details to him. The moment when Kirito and Eugeo clashed swords and both of them had the same vision, not just Eugeo or not just Kirito, etc. This remembrance moment was built up in the contents of the past 10 or so episodes that the anime never bothered showcasing properly, so here we are with both Kirito and Eugeo suddenly remembering everything because anime. But when Kirito grabs the Red Rose sword, now that is where the anime starts taking all the liberties, and honestly it is for the worse. I'm not even sure what is wrong here, as you can hear the exact emotions Kirito is conveying thanks to Matsuoka's voice acting. He was given directions to ensure this scene was adapted as it was in the books. Alas, every visual of Kirito gives an entirely different vibe. You see, this was the moment Kirito admitted his defeat, the end of his journey. That's why resisting is the only reason I am here right now. There was no longer a battle to win. He could no longer keep his promise to bring Eugeo back to real life. Cardinal was gone, and on and on and on. Kirito at this point had lost, and the only reason he kept going was because he wanted to respect the memories of those he cared about. And on top of that, the weight of carrying 2 swords, he felt the agonizing weight of the blades. He could barely stand, his legs were shaking under the weight, and he couldn't even keep his posture straight due to all of this as he slowly took steps forward one by one. I don't even need to say anything, I'll just show you the light novel illustration by Abek and you will see the difference. The entire context of this scene in the light novels is that Kirito has lost everything yet resists with the remaining power he has. The way anime portrays this is... Kirito is so fucking cool, man. Look at the way he moves and his eyes, or rather Kirito God Mode returns for some people out there, you know who those are. It's such a huge shame that Kirito's lowest moment in the entire series is portrayed as Kirito cool as fuck in the anime, which also ties terribly with the ending of the episode as well, but oh boy, we'll get there soon. Speaking of the yellow eyes, I honestly don't know what A1 was thinking. I do hope this will be something they'll fix in the Blu-ray release, but they messed up the one concept they established themselves. The yellow eyes were a sign of overwriting the system as far back as Aincrad in severe cases of system exploit due to incarnation ordinal scale, or proto-incarnation, let's say, in less evolved devices like nerve gear and hemisphere due to how the hardware and system works. It was the yellow eyes that showed up to signify a glitch in the system, so to say, a significantly unexpected behavior. The first bit where A1 lost me was Kirito against Chudelkin, where they didn't even bother with the yellow eyes on Kirito, so I had thought, hey, maybe we won't get yellow eyes in Alicization since incarnation is not really a system exploit here, but rather how the system inherently works. But then we get the yellow eyes here, only for it to disappear entirely with the first scene cut there. They couldn't even remain consistent with the yellow eyes within the scene itself, which just speaks volumes to the adaptation of this episode. Honestly, I will make an entirely different video down the line regarding the production issues of Alicization Anime in general, but let's move on with the battle scene before I talk too much on this tangent. I really don't like how properly Kirito acts as he dual wields compared to the last-ditch effort Kirito that was portrayed in the source material. Just to make Kirito look cool, but that's not the only issue with the fight scene. Yes, the hair tentacle scene, which just leads me to believe they have completely written off the concept of skill connect in the anime. A similar instance had happened back in episode 14 when Eugeo was fighting Düsselbert, where they cut off the skill connect moment, but here when Quinella and Kirito cut each other's arms, Quinella turned her hair into sharp needles to destroy Kirito, not to harmlessly lift them up into the air, whereas Kirito in that instant utilized skill connect with his left hand to eliminate his post-skill delay to destroy Quinella in return in that very instance. The way Quinella just lifts Kirito up and Kirito slowly coming to his senses to use a second Warble Strike, I was genuinely chuckling at that moment due to how nonsensical their climax battle scene had become compared to the perfectly okay explanation that was provided in the light novels. Why do you even slow down the scenes if you're gonna cut every single inner monologue in the first place? Like, all these decisions are just contradictory to each other. People defend dropping inner monologues claiming it destroys the pacing. Yeah, it does. But if you're gonna destroy the pacing anyways by slowing down the scene with such an absurd decision, why not at least include some inner monologue when the pacing is already destroyed? If you aren't going to consistently use the concept of yellow eyes, why would you haphazardly include that creates this major inconsistency? If you aren't going to portray Kirito in an utterly defeated manner, why would you have Matsuoka-san voice him that way? These are the questions I have that I have yet to find answers for, and it's utterly disappointing that all of these exist in the most impactful moment of the series, and boy oh boy, we're done with the battle, but we're not done with the episode yet. Quinella's demise was portrayed perfectly well, though I'm still confused as to why they had her say her final words in a separate scene instead of the last moments of her burning out like in the novels. You know, you didn't need to break the pacing there with an anime original scene. The way it was done was perfectly fine in the books, but whatever. However, props for the Eugeo's final scene. It was absolutely beautiful and heartbreaking. Nobunaga-san's delivery is absolutely amazing. The animations are gorgeous, the full memory of Eugeo that Quinella used to manipulate him, the final visualization of going different ways hinted at by the opening, once again accompanied by Reona's Over the Rainbow. Eugeo finally truly uniting with his childhood friend Alice Tsuberg, as well as with his other childhood friend that he had forgotten earlier, Kirito. And of course the naming of the black one, the Night Sky Sword. Now you know why the hand reaching to the stars in the opening was Eugeo's, and why I was so mad at Foxen for blatantly spoiling the sword as early as it was created in the episodes back in his videos then. This was the second ending of the episode and the one of the 3 wrap-ups in episode 24 that the anime portrayed absolutely perfectly. The third wrap-up, however, is their biggest screw-up in my opinion. The Ocean Turtle Contact. You watched the anime, you know what happened, so I won't reiterate what happened in the anime. Instead, I'll guide you through why the light novels version was so much better. At this point in the light novel, we experience events from Kirito's point of view, the person who lost everything, his childhood friends, his best friend, the caretaker of him for over 2 years, the promises he made to all those around him, the person who suffered an utter defeat in every front he set out to accomplish something. And the moment he opens up the console and contacts real life, he learns that nothing is truly over yet. The main drive of the scene was the unknown. The unknown enhanced by the fact that all we got was Kirito's perspective of these scenes. We hear Kirito lashing out towards Kikoka in an event that they barely even notice him in the first place, getting told to shut the fuck up and listen in a manner he never heard from Kikoka before catching him off guard, despite all his ongoing rage and self-guilt, as he suddenly starts hearing gunshots coming from the background. Kirito's tone changing entirely from "what the fuck have you guys done" to "what the fuck is happening over there," as he kept hearing the chaotic sounds without a single visual or hint from Kikoka as to what is going on, only receiving clear instructions on something that he needs to do for some reason. And suddenly Kikoka ordering Higa, Rinko and Asuna to be immediately evacuated, which brings Kirito back to his senses completely, Asuna being there. And whatever that was happening out there had put her in immediate life-threatening danger. But before he could even gather his thoughts, another voice shouted into the comms with a warning about a power cut leading to a power surge, a simple sound wave visualizer in front of Kirito being the only thing Kirito was registering from the scene. He had absolutely no idea what was really happening. And when the surge hit, unlike the anime's portrayal, Kirito only felt a wave hit him that moment. There was no physical feeling, nothing pushed him away, nothing struck him, there was no pain, no impact, no sensation of any kind. But at that moment, Kirito realized he had suffered so much. Not physically, but mentally, on his soul, on his Fluctlight. He didn't know what had happened really, how he was affected, but something terrible had indeed happened. He felt as if he was being ripped into pieces and thrown into an utter void. Before Kirito lost all of his senses, he heard one last distant voice calling out to him. A voice that he recognized as nostalgic, incredibly precious, so much so that he wanted to cry. Kirito thought he recognized the voice a second ago. It was... One last thought appeared in what remained of his Fluctlight. Whose voice is that? Now frankly, that was an incredible ending to the light novels. Unlike the usual episode cliffhanger like Eugeo and Kirito lunging towards each other, this ending was not designed as "oh, guess what specific scene we'll be having next time." This was designed as a full break cliffhanger and thus utilized every single emotion it had in the novels. The fact that the scene was completely from Kirito's perspective was a significant part of the impact of this cliffhanger. Yes, we knew something terrible was going on at Ocean Turtle, but what exactly was terrible enough that the Japanese self-defense forces was completely on the run and Asuna's life was in danger? Did something really happen to Kirito, or was Kirito just imagining things due to, anxiety of the moment and sensory overload, coupled with him enduring an FLA normalization back to 1:1, and then whatever Kikoka meant by max Fluctlight acceleration, which had to be higher than the 1000 factor that he mentioned earlier, because the circumstances had changed so much in the last 30 seconds. The voice had to be Asuna, but Kirito doesn't remember who the voice was as he slowly succumbs into the void. The answers to these questions did not exist in the book. These were questions that kept me going until December 2018 as I patiently waited for the next volume of the story to get released, volume 15, Alicization Invading. But now, let me revisit those questions solely based on what the anime has provided. What caused Japanese self-defense forces to make a retreat in their own secret base? Oh, it's that guy we saw back in episode 1, whoever he is, and Poe having a full-blown military raid on Ocean Turtle. Thanks for the answer, anime. Did something really happen to Kirito? Oh wait, that very visible light completely struck and destroyed Kirito. Yup, he's definitely hurt. Oh my god, he doesn't even remember. Oh wait, he actually does remember. The last thing he says in the anime is literally Asuna, with his imagination of Asuna floating closer and closer. Fam, volume 14 ended with Kirito not even recognizing Asuna. That was the cliffhanger that made us wait. We knew absolutely nothing. We were just as much in the dark as Kirito was, and that was the cliffhanger, the absolute unknown. Sure, I can't go and claim the anime left you with no questions. There are still questions, but the depth of the question is missing at this point, and that just destroys the entire impact that was there in the source material. The entire spectrum of what the fuck is happening here has been narrowed down to why is that guy and Poe having a military raid on Ocean Turtle? what is really going on with Kirito has become, will Kirito survive, which, come on, nobody's stupid enough to ask that question. Now, these narrowed down questions work absolutely great on their own. They are perfect questions, action-oriented questions, very what is the next thing kind of questions that will get you back in next week episodes. The problem is, the next episode is not next week. The next episode is 6 months away, scheduled to air in October 2019. So the fact that the cliffhanger has been shifted into an episodic level cliffhanger makes absolutely no sense here, as the original cliffhanger from the novels worked as the mid-story break as it was intended. It was outright baffling to see the anime commit to the mid-season break, yet adapt the cliffhanger as an episodic cliffhanger in such a poor and shallow way. That just makes me feel sad for those who experienced this scene for the first time from the anime. There was so much more to this scene that the anime completely ripped apart, and honestly, if I have to share my pick for the worst ending of an arc from the anime perspective, it has to be this one, Alicization's Human Realm arc. Now, Aincrad ended on a major cliffhanger and was perfect on its own. Fairy Dance had a conclusive ending, and Phantom Bullet had a conclusive ending with Laughing Coffin tease. Mother's Rosario, Ordinal Scale both had their perfect ending, whether teasing at future content or wrapping up their own arc. Human Realm arc of Alicization fails on both aspects by providing answers to what it is they are trying to hint at in a blatant manner, and it doesn't even wrap up anything, as this arc of the story was not designed to wrap up much to begin with in the first place. In the end, I just have to say that I'm incredibly frustrated that the amazing run of the anime has had since episode 8 and onwards, with the exception of episode 13, has come crashing down with this ending. Episode 24 was supposed to be the best ending of an arc, with all these concepts and emotions it was conveying, as well as, things it was hinting at, and in the end it was just, look, Kirito duel wheel, so cool, and hey, the anime will continue, so there's like guns and shit, so wait 6 months, thanks. But yeah, there's your explained video you've been asking me for 2 weeks. I told you all the way back, right after the episode aired, that it would not be a pleasant explained video and that I had a lot of criticisms to share, and now you know where I was coming from. But now, I want to hear from you. If you read the light novels, do you agree with my points? If you haven't read the light novels and are following the anime only, do my arguments sound reasonable to you in terms of the depth of the cliffhanger? Or, if you have nothing to say, just write down, stay cool. That would have worked so much better if the anime had adapted this episode nicely, so I could make a more narrative focused explained video with more emotions, but alas, I'm here to highlight the adaptation changes in detail so you can get the full picture of how things truly happened. So I hope I did not come off as too negative. I certainly tried and intended to, but I just can't act like some other people who like to go crazy and yell at these things. Episode 24 was frustrating for me, and I hope this video explains why. Also, you can ask questions. My Alicization Q&A will happen for this episode too in a week or something. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more on Sword Art Online. I got a bunch of Sword Art Online videos planned throughout the 6-month break, so stay tuned. Until then, stay cool.